I need to tell someone before I die. I'm 71 years old, lung cancer. The doctors say I have maybe 6 months, probably less. For 15 years I've carried something, a secret so heavy that some nights I can't breathe, and it's not the cancer. I was a park ranger in the Olympic National Forest from 2004 to 2019, and I'm responsible for the deaths of 4 people, not directly. I didn't pull a trigger, I didn't push anyone off a cliff, but I knew they were going to die, and I did nothing to stop it. It started in my 2nd year. I was stationed at a backcountry cabin about 18 miles from the nearest road, deep wilderness. The kind of place where you could scream and no one would hear you for miles. I loved it at first. The solitude, the silence, just me and the forest. But by year 2, I started noticing things. Footprints that were too big, too human, structures in the woods, trees bent and woven together in patterns that no animal could make. And the smell, that thick, rotting smell that showed up in certain areas and made every instinct in my body scream to run. I told myself it was nothing. Bears. Elk. My imagination playing tricks after too many months alone. Then I saw one. It was June 2006. Early morning, just after dawn. I was checking a game camera I'd set up near a creek bed about 4 miles from my cabin. When I got there, the camera was destroyed. Ripped off the tree, smashed into pieces. I was kneeling down, picking up the fragments, when I felt it, that feeling you get when something is watching you. I looked up, and there it was, 40 feet away, standing in the shadow of an old-growth cedar, 8 feet tall, maybe more, covered in dark reddish-brown hair, matted and thick, shoulders wider than any man I'd ever seen, and the face, human, but not. Heavy brow, flat nose, lips that looked like they could smile or snarl. But the eyes were what got me. Dark, intelligent. Watching me the way a man watches an insect he's deciding whether to crush. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. We stared at each other for what felt like hours. Then it turned and walked into the forest. Silent, smooth, gone. I should have reported it. I should have told someone, my supervisor, the park service, anyone. But I didn't, because I knew what would happen. They'd send teams, researchers, media. They'd tear apart my forest looking for proof, and they'd either find nothing and think I was crazy, or they'd find something, and everything would change. So I kept quiet, and I started watching. Over the next year, I learned their patterns. There were at least 3 of them, maybe 4. A family, I think. They moved through the forest on a circuit, certain areas at certain times. They avoided humans when they could, watched from a distance, stayed hidden, but I could tell they were struggling. The winters were getting harder, the elk herds were shrinking, climate change, development, whatever. Their food sources were disappearing. I started finding deer carcasses near my cabin, stripped clean, bones cracked for marrow. They were getting desperate, and desperate animals are dangerous. The first incident happened in fall of 2007. A solo hiker went missing in the restricted area north of my station. Search teams looked for a week, found nothing. Not a backpack, not a shoe, not a trace. The official report said he probably fell into a ravine somewhere, happens all the time. But I knew better. I'd found the tracks, leading away from the trail. 2 sets of footprints, one human, one not. The human prints stopped after about 100 yards. The other prints kept going. After that, I made a decision. I'm not proud of it. I'm not asking for forgiveness, but I want you to understand, I was alone out there, miles from backup, living in a wooden cabin that wouldn't stop a determined raccoon, let alone something that could tear a man apart. I was scared, so I made a deal. I started leaving food. Once a week, I'd hike to a clearing about 2 miles from my cabin. I'd leave whatever I had, deer meat, fish, canned goods, whatever. At first I didn't know if they'd take it, but by the 2nd week, the food was gone, and the footprints around the clearing told me who'd taken it. The arrangement worked. For years, it worked. I left food. They stayed away from my cabin. They stayed away from the main trails where hikers traveled. I told myself I was keeping people safe, that by feeding them, I was preventing attacks. And maybe that was true, partly. But the real truth? I was protecting myself. I was buying my survival with scraps of meat. By 2015, I'd been doing this for 8 years. The creatures, I never called them Bigfoot, never gave them a cute name. They knew me now. Sometimes I'd catch glimpses of them watching from the trees while I left the food. They never approached, never threatened, but they watched. And I got the feeling they understood. We had an agreement. I fed them. They let me live. Then came October 2019. The group was 4 hikers from Seattle, 2 couples in their 30s, experienced outdoors people, according to their permits. They were supposed to stay on the main trail loop, a 3-day trip, nothing unusual. But on the 2nd day, they made a mistake. They went off-trail, headed north into the restricted area. My area. I didn't know at first. I was doing my weekly food drop when I found the evidence. Fresh boot prints, 4 sets, heading deeper into the forest, heading toward the places where I knew they nested. My blood went cold. I followed the tracks for about a mile. Then I found their camp, 2 tents, still set up, backpacks inside, food scattered around, but no people. And surrounding the camp, those other prints, the big ones, at least 3 sets circling the tents like sharks around a boat. I knew what had happened. The hikers had stumbled into the wrong territory, set up camp in the wrong place, and they'd been taken. I stood there for a long time. The smart thing, the right thing, was to radio for help. Call in a search team, give them the coordinates. But if I did that, they'd come out here. They'd see the prints, the structures, the evidence of something that wasn't supposed to exist. They'd find my food drops. They'd figure out what I'd been doing. My career would be over. I'd probably face charges, interfering with wildlife, maybe worse. And the creatures, they'd be hunted, captured, killed. 15 years of secrecy, destroyed. I told myself the hikers were already dead. I told myself there was nothing I could do. I told myself calling for help would only put more people in danger. I told myself a lot of things. And then I turned around and walked back to my cabin. I didn't report the camp. I didn't radio for help. I waited. 2 days later, a separate ranger found signs of the missing group on the main trail. The search began. Teams came in, helicopters, dogs. They found the camp eventually. They found the scattered gear, but they never found the hikers. The official report said they probably got lost, fell into a ravine, died of exposure. The forest swallowed them up. Case closed. 4 people, 4 families who never got answers. And the case was closed. Because of me. The night after the search was called off, I was in my cabin. It was late, past midnight. I couldn't sleep, hadn't really slept in days. I was sitting at my table, staring at nothing, when I heard the footsteps, slow, heavy, coming toward the cabin. I grabbed my rifle, went to the window, and I saw it, the big one, the male I'd seen years ago. He was standing at the edge of the clearing. Just standing there, looking at the cabin, looking at me. Then he did something I'll never forget. He walked forward, slowly. No threat in his posture, no aggression. He walked up to my window, and he stopped. I could see him clearly now. The moonlight was bright that night. The dark hair, the massive shoulders, the hands like dinner plates, and those eyes, those intelligent, ancient eyes. He raised one hand and placed it flat against the glass. And he looked at me. I've thought about that look every day for 15 years. It wasn't anger, it wasn't hunger, it was something else. Recognition, acknowledgement, maybe even gratitude. He stood there for a long moment. Then he exhaled, a long, slow breath that fogged the glass. And I swear on everything I have left. He nodded, just slightly. A small movement of that massive head, a nod. Like a man thanking an accomplice. Then he turned and walked back into the forest, and I never saw him again. I quit 2 months later, told them I was burned out, needed a change. They didn't ask questions. I moved to New Mexico. Desert, no forests. No places where something could watch from the trees. I tried to forget. I couldn't. 4 people died because of me, not because I killed them, but because I chose my secret over their lives, because I was afraid, because I was a coward. I've looked up their names over the years. The hikers. Michael Torres, 34, high school teacher. Jennifer Torres, 32, nurse, his wife. David Okonkwo, 35, software engineer. Lisa Okonkwo, 33, architect, his wife. They had families, parents who never got closure, friends who still wonder what happened. And I know, I've always known, and I said nothing. Some nights, I still dream about that window, about that hand pressed against the glass, about those eyes looking at me, about that nod. He thanked me. He thanked me for letting them die. And the worst part? Part of me was relieved. Part of me was glad the secret was safe. And that part of me, that's the part I can't forgive. I don't know what happens when you die. Maybe nothing, maybe something. But if there's any kind of judgment waiting for me, I know what I'll answer for. Not the feeding, not the secrecy, the choice. That moment in the forest, standing over their empty camp, when I decided that 4 lives were worth less than my secret. That's what I'll answer for. So if you're ever in the deep woods, the real wilderness, where no one can hear you scream, remember this. The forest has rules. Some of them are written in guidebooks, some of them are written in blood, and some of them are deals made in silence between men and things that shouldn't exist. Be careful out there, because you never know who's been there before you, or what arrangements they've made. This was my story. The story I've carried for 15 years. The story I'll take to my grave, which isn't far now. What do you think? Did I make the right choice? Or should I have called for help, even if it meant exposing everything? Tell me in the comments. And let me know where you're watching from. I'm always curious about who's listening to these stories in the middle of the night. If this story got under your skin, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. There's another story waiting for you right here. I'll see you in the next one.